In the last Vibe Code Rescue, I created a utility that I could use to support in refactoring. In this video, I'm going to actually put it to use. So I want to take this parseTime method, function I should say, and make it a static method in the duration class. The problem is that it doesn't really make sense because it returns a number, and where it's called from uses the number directly. So I need to change the coupling so that the rest of these call sites use duration instead of directly using a number. So I'm going to start by using the utility I make. And actually that reminds me, the first thing I actually need to do is something I should have done in the last video, which is take this thing that I test drove and move it somewhere. I'm going to move it to a new file, and then I'm going to drag that file into utils. And that should update the imports correctly. So now I have this utility that I can use. Back to timer control, I'm going to start by just calling that method. And that won't affect behavior for the simple reason that it can't be called because it can't compile. So I'm going to pass in what I need to pass in. I'll pass in the parsed time, parsed number of seconds. And the other thing that newOrNull needs is a type. And the type is duration. Now that should compile. If I went and actually added the import, that would compile. But of course, we're not actually using anything. So I need to also make a const parsed duration. Now I have this duration, and I want to use it. I want to use it in the rest of the method, but I don't want to just, hammer it in. I want to be transformative about this. So I'm going to wrap all of this in a block, and I'm going to null coalesce the parsed number of seconds back into null, which maybe seems weird, but it'll make sense in a second. Then inside this block, I'm going to make a new constant. And that constant is what I will assign to the seconds in the parsed duration. So this will either be seconds, which is this parsed value, or it'll be undefined and coalesce back into null. Now I can inline it, and then I can get rid of that intermediate block that I created. And now you can see I've got one section of code that's about parsing and produces a duration or null, and then another section of code that is about using that duration somehow or other. And that means I can, of course, extract that first section of code into its own method. So we'll call it parseDuration. Now I'll just repeat that for the other call site. There's only two call sites for parseTime. One is now in parseDuration, and one is directly in this direction input. Okay, so let's do the same thing again. So I'll start with newOrNull. And the reason it's safe to call this method is that we know exactly what it does. We know exactly what it does because I use test-driven development to build all of its behavior. We know that if what gets passed in is null, we get null out. And if what gets passed in is not null, then we get a new object based on that input. So I can pass in the parsed number, duration. And then I'll say const parsed duration equals, and I will make myself a new block, const parsed duration dot seconds. Oops. See, when you're refactoring, it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes, but it's easy to find them and easy to go back when you make mistakes. Okay, so coalesce it back into null, const parsed equals parsed duration dot seconds. Wow, what am I doing wrong here? Second, weird. And then we'll inline and get rid of the extra braces. that allows me to extract another function. We'll call it parseDuration2. Now I'll go use my favorite trick. Copy, I will paste, and I'll see that I have the exact same code, but with two different names. So I can go back to where I called parseDuration2, make it called up parseDuration1, and then get rid of parseDuration2. Okay, so now I have this nice parseDuration method, and what I really want is for it to live in duration. So I'm going to start by moving it up to parse time. We'll start figuring out what we need to do in order to move these things. Okay, so how many uses of this clampsec thing do I have? Because I know I use it in parse time. I have 3, and every single one is in parse time. I know I have it in parse time because there's a lot of stuff off camera where I go and research and think about things. And yeah, so I know that I need to find a way to move this. Well, the easiest way to move it, since it's only used inside parse time, is to just move it into parse time. It's not used anywhere else. When I look at parse time, I see it's only called one place, and it's called in this file. So I do not need this export at all. And in fact, let's call this parse seconds from raw string, which is safe to do and makes things a little easier. And then when I look at this, I realize I want to do the same thing. I want to take this code and just move it inside parseDuration because it's not being used anywhere else. So that's a harmless thing for me to do. I'll indent it to make it easier to notice. Okay, so now I have one method that I want to move. Used in 2 places. I want it to live in duration. And I think we already know how to move something to a class. So I copy it, I go to duration, and I will paste it. And it notices that newOrNull doesn't exist. I need to import it, but otherwise it pastes just fine. The other thing that needs to happen is this needs to become static. And now that it's static, I can go to everywhere where I call the global one, or the module scope one, and just put duration dot in front of it. I could possibly have deleted that one and then used VS Code to add the duration dot, but I feel like this is safer. This is now not used anywhere. The last thing I'll do is rename this to parse. Oh, there's actually a mistake I made in the last video, a really, I think, kind of funny one, where I misspelled actual. I noticed it while I was editing. So we'll fix that too. All right, so now if you look at timer controls, first of all, it's quite a bit shorter than when it started. Let me get rid of this. Used imports. It's quite a bit shorter than when we started, but almost more importantly, it's easier to understand. We don't have this weird like parse a number and then use it thing. We say, here's some text, convert it to a duration for me with Duration.parse. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.